Thanks everyone for joining. I know we're all in our home environments, so things could get interesting. If you hear the wonderful sounds of My Little Pony in the background, you'll know that's coming from me. Well, not me, my daughter. I'm going to share my screen with you. I've got a few slides. I would like to try and keep this really practical and useful. Many of you will have experienced the Resilience Institute workshop, so some of this will be familiar, but I think for all of us, myself included, remembering some of the basics and executing them, using them in real time can be really useful in challenging situations. So first off, as we always do, and you guys will know it if you've been to one of myself or Declan or Dr. Sven's workshops, is we have a little stretch. So if you'll join me wherever you are, you don't have to stand up, but I'm not going to stand up. I'm wearing tracksuit pants, as many of you are. So we'll just do a little shoulder stretch. How about a little neck stretch? Over to one side and across to the other side. And we'll do a little gentle look over your shoulder and the other way. And maybe just a little shake out of the shoulders, roll over. You know, some of us have been spending more time than usual at desks, less time than usual. So we'll warm ourselves up. Okay, we don't do virtual high fives even. I'm not sure if they're safe. So we'll jump straight into a definition of resilience. And just to set the scene, the first component of resilience is our ability to bounce, to recognize adversity, and ideally to bounce rapidly. And in many ways, that's what this session is all about. So developing those skills, recognizing the downward spiral. The next part is growth, and we talk about growth in terms of our own self-development, learning about ourselves, how we respond to challenging situations, building up skills because the world is changing. Some people call it VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. And if we can constantly develop our skills, that's an appropriate response to all of that change rather than feeling anxiety, something we'll look at today. Also, growth on a biological level. We do grow throughout our lives. Neural plasticity shows that our brains change structurally based on how we're using them. And epigenetics shows that we can actually activate or suppress certain genes based on things that we're doing in our everyday lives. So bearing that in mind, especially over this challenging time, it can actually, we've got the opportunity to build some habits, put in place some practices that might really support us through this time and beyond. We'll look at a few of those over the course of today. And I will send a slide extract along with some resources afterwards, so no need to take too many notes. Connection is really important foundation of our resilience, according to many researchers, and we are able to develop this deliberately. And if we can stay focused on the people in our lives, if we can communicate effectively using tools like this so that we can see each other's faces, we can be more effective, especially in challenging circumstances. And ideally, flow. Now, flow state, I dare say, is proving difficult for many of us with distractions in the home environment, but recognizing that we can cultivate the conditions for that flow state, that deep work, those immersive moments where we're completely engaged in a task, can take a little bit of pressure off. We just remind ourselves that multitasking is not that effective. Let's create little pockets of flow in our busy, busy lives and busy, busy worlds and distracting environments. And I'll look at that and I'll send you an infographic at the end. So what's going on here? I dare say many of us are experiencing some of these emotions right now. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross named the 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Denial, or a state of numb shock, is dangerous in a crisis, right? Moving rapidly to acceptance can actually prepare us for bouncing back. And we'll look at that bottom downward spiral so that we can prepare ourselves for bounce, because it has been a challenging couple of weeks. This whole situation that we're in escalated incredibly fast. If you look at how different people respond to challenge, you'll see the person on the top left quite relaxed, quite happy, you know, and many of us might actually feel that way in the midst of a lockdown. We're going, wow, no more travel. I can stay at home. This is fun. I'm getting to spend more time with my kids. Awesome. Whereas some of us might be feeling some of the other emotions that you can see. What's interesting is those people are all in the exact same situation. That's a shared experience. And they respond using their biology: fight, flight, freeze responses that are deeply embedded in how we respond to challenge. So we're all experiencing different stages of grief or maybe excitement, and we'll dissect that over the course of this short session. How do we respond to challenge? If we can come from a place of relaxation, define a challenge, get ourselves into that flow state, we're very calm, engaged, we remove distractions from the environment, and then take a break. We rest, reset, and then ride that wave up and down throughout our lives. What a great rhythm that we can create, not just now, but always. However, what we find in the modern world is most people are in that peak zone. So we've got a lot going on. There's a lot of cortisol, a lot of adrenaline rushing around in our systems. We're rushing from one task to the other. If we do that for too long, the biology is responding to what it perceives as threats or challenges in the environment. If we do that for too long, we can actually start to slide into distress, and maybe we move into what they call code black in the military. We're no longer in the zone. We're no longer very effective. Remember, our biology responds to the challenges of our everyday life. And you can measure this. And many of you will have even been connected to a heart rate monitor over the course of our workshops to show in real time what happens. If you do have a smartphone, there is a little app called Welltory. It's free, Welltory. And what it does is it shines the camera flash through your finger, and it uses the camera to just check your pulse, and it will give you an indication of your coherence. Nice way to start the day, potentially, just to check how your body is responding to a prolonged challenge. Real-time resilience is all about checking in a very simple way. Check in with your body. How's your posture? How's your pulse? How's your breathing? Check in with your emotions. What emotions are you experiencing? Can you name them? Can you be very specific? That helps build up your emotional literacy. And what's going on in your mind? Can you check in with your mind? Because often, if we can bring ourselves back to the present moment, because remember, our body is always in the present moment. It's our mind that tends to drift off into the future or the past, and it can start looping around, rumination, thoughts of things that have happened, anxiety, thoughts of things that may happen. And our body, our biology responds as if those threats are happening right now. So we might just be contemplating what's going to happen after the lockdown, and our body is trying to get us away. It's trying to pump oxygen to the limbs so that we can run away from that potential threat. But we're in lockdown, so unless you're about to go for a run, it's not the best response. So some other things that we'll focus on, how can you create an environment that's going to support your resilience, create some rhythm in your day, maybe cultivating or reserving a few pockets of time for that flow state, just staying focused on what's important and making sure that you rest and communicate effectively. Impulse control is also really important. Spare a thought for some of our furry friends during the pandemic. They've been suffering a condition called happy tail syndrome. I dare say generations of dogs have been waiting for this time. This is true. Some of these dogs are getting so excited that the families are not going to work that they're actually injuring their tails. So we'll spare a thought for those little guys. Now, in terms of our real-time resilience, many of you have encountered the resilience spiral. And the bottom half is really all about our mental fitness, our ability to bounce, our ability to identify challenge and rebound, get ourselves back up to where we need to be. And the top half of the spiral are about skills and competencies that can support our resilience, that enable us to stay calm, to stay well, to stay connected, to stay focused on whatever is important. So in a nutshell, what we want to achieve in real-time resilience is that insight, that self-awareness. How am I doing? Where on the spiral am I right now? That's a really important first step. Mastery is knowing that I've got one or two skills to get to wherever it is that I want to be, where I need to be right now. Empathy is a really important tipping point because it enables us to start checking in with other people, our family, our community, our co-workers who are in remote places. How are they doing? Where on the spiral are they right now? And finally, influence. If we've got those habits that help support our resilience, that help support our well-being and our mental fitness, we find ourselves further up that spiral in a place where we can make more clear decisions. We're more present. We're more in the zone as opposed to being out of the zone. Now, many of you have been through the downward spiral in one of our workshops, but I thought it's really worthwhile just refreshing that, especially at the moment. So I will just do a quick run through. The first state of our resilience being compromised, the first stage is confusion. We're actually not sure what to focus on. That's a real risk. And it might be slightly different to what it's like in our everyday work, where we're bombarded with people tapping us on the shoulder and busyness going on. Now it's a different kind of confusion. Maybe we're very connected to devices, to news feeds, plus trying to manage a family and connect to our work. The next stage down, we call this cognitive failure, is where we're no longer able to focus. We're just basically zoning out. The input exceeds our ability to process and create an effective output. That's important to take notice of. Things become emotional as we move down that spiral. Some of us are feeling physically isolated, some of us emotionally isolated. This can bring with it feelings of just demotivation, avoidance. I don't have the energy to get started. Becomes vulnerable when we just really lack motivation. And we often start to notice that our well-being suffers as we move down the spiral to this area. Sleep is broken. Our exercise routines are non-existent. We actually find it really hard to start because it's a cycle, right? If I'm not sleeping very well, it's going to be very, very difficult to motivate myself to go for a walk in the morning. So it's worth watching out for. Distress, the body starts showing signs of, inflammation. If I've been rushing around with too much cortisol and adrenaline in my body for prolonged periods of time, I will start to show some symptoms of distress, and it could be eczema, irritable bowel, sleep problems, asthma, aches and pains, whatever it might be. This starts to happen. And what we often do is we go to the pharmacy or a doctor and get a pill or some kind of cream or whatever it might be, a prescription, and we mask the symptoms. Sometimes it's worthwhile just considering what's happening upstream. And at the bottom of the spiral, a complete loss of interest, we might start to feel depressed. It could be a major health event. You've all heard this before if you've been through our workshops, but this is one way of describing how resilience can fail, how we become compromised in terms of our mental health and our well-being. Many organizations use this as a way for leaders to have more effective conversations with their employees, because it allows you to be quite granular. We're not just putting everything in a bucket and saying, you've got a problem. Well, let's try and define exactly what's going on each of those levels. So here's some practical tips to help you work through it. At the bottom, obviously getting some help, reaching out. There are lots of hotlines that we can call. There are people we can talk to just to check in and get a second perspective. Remember, fixing exercise and sleep and trying out positivity as a practice, we'll talk about that in a moment, can be really useful in just helping us nudge towards balance. At the distress level, obviously understanding what these symptoms are, but allowing the body some space to heal. And that might be in the form of just doing some exercise, sleeping a little bit better, going for a massage. Well, not really at the moment. We might do a little self-massage on your shoulders, or, just even tapping the vagus nerve, which runs down from behind the skull. That's integral to our relaxation system. So if you would like, you can join me right now. Just, run your fingers along the back of your neck. It's a very simple practice, but it triggers the vagus nerve, which is part of our parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest nervous system. So I'll let you keep doing that while we continue up that spiral. Meditation, incredibly powerful, not only in developing our attention control, but also helping us to stay really present in the moment. And as we move up that spiral, vulnerable, just taking defined steps to renew. It might be, okay, we're in the midst of a challenge. We're just starting to adjust to our new routines, but we're going to lock in some very specific schedules throughout the day, just as we would in our normal environment. So at 6 a.m. we wake up, we have breakfast together, then mum or dad goes for 1 hour of flow time. And after that, we reconnect and we have a chat about how the day is going. We go for a group walk, and then we have another hour or 90 minutes of flow time, just trying to create some rhythms in the day that will support us, because it's very easy just to go, wow, the day is long and there's lots of distraction, and suddenly we're all working at 1 a.m. And not feeling so good. So little defined steps with some rhythm. Connecting, if we've withdrawn, finding someone we can talk to. The power of tools like Zoom is, it's actually quite amazing that we get to just detect and check in and look each other in the eyes, hear voices. It activates the vagus nerve, and it enables us to have much stronger connections than just through email or just through phone calls. So if you can, with your staff, Zoom is a free tool. Just get a license and make sure that you all look at each other from time to time. Someone suggested 15 minutes a day for leaders, and cascade that down the whole organization. So everyone just spends 15 minutes looking at each other and having a human conversation wherever possible. When we're disengaging, taking a break, trying not to do more than one thing at the same time. It can become very tempting to be connected and refreshing that number to see how many infections there are, those kinds of things, looking at feeds, look at what other people are saying. So just trying to stop, do one thing at a time, be really deliberate, walk outside, get some sunshine, take a break, have a stretch, and then reset. And that's in terms of everything, work-related tasks, but also in terms of just connecting with our family and simplifying. It leads perfectly on. Is just trying not to do more than one thing at the same time. Whatever it is that we're doing is absolutely fine, but just be quite deliberate. It's not productive trying to have a conversation and refreshing feeds and watching Netflix and having a laptop. Rather, grab one of those things and do it with your full attention. I think we can get into flow state no matter what it is, including playing My Little Ponies, which is part of my world at the moment. Okay, you've all heard of Amy Cuddy's power poses. This is a good time for it. You can do it sitting down if you wish. So the science shows that these power poses are an excellent antidote to some of the low power postures we will all find ourselves in throughout our lives, and perhaps more so at the moment, perhaps less so. Where I live in Mount Maunganui, I've never seen so many people on the beach, not even in the middle of summer. So people are obviously getting out there and enjoying the lockdown, I suppose. So first power pose, palms forward, shoulders back. You can do this sitting down if you wish, or feel free to stand up wherever you are. This can increase testosterone assertiveness by 20% and decrease cortisol levels by 25%. The next one, hands up in the air, wherever you are. This is a very effective pose. If you're ever on the savannah in Africa and an elephant is charging at you, it's not worth running. Do this. The elephant doesn't always stop, but you might as well go down with your hands up in the air. That's what I always think. The next one, hands on hips. Nice assertive posture. You will have seen people wander around like this. If your partner walks up to you with their hands on the hips over the next month or so, I say counter it with one of those, but it helps if they understand what you're doing. The last one is hands behind the head. Primatologists would tell you that this is a sign of supreme confidence, right? Because in nature, primates, monkeys don't do this unless they're very playful and happy. So you're revealing all of your vital organs. You're not feeling threatened. So this is a good one to do from time to time. If you've got kids who are very connected to devices, get them to run through a few power poses. Make that a practice after digital time. I think it's quite useful. Look, I can't say they're definitely going to do it. I'm trying, but we'll get there. So the next part I just thought is worth refreshing on is staying calm in intense situations, because obviously we are all in a state of heightened nervous system arousal. So what can we do? And you've heard this before, and it's so powerful. It's almost too simple, but this is real-time resilience. This is what sports people use in the midst of a big game. This is what they use in the military when the battlefield is chaos. And it's all about just calming down our biology. In nature, there is no animal, well, there's not many animals that breathe long and slow and calm when they're in a real challenge. What we do is we activate our biology, we breathe fast, we pump oxygen to our limbs, we release a cocktail of chemicals that are designed to stimulate our body and get us out of danger. We have the opportunity to break that feedback loop by calming down our biology. And as a result, the brain goes, I was actually feeling quite anxious, but now the body, I noticed the body is actually really calm. And as a result, the brain starts to calm. We start to think more effectively. So the architecture for this is very simple. We use diaphragmatic breathing. If any of you have done Pilates or yoga or martial arts, you'll know it as belly breathing. What we really want to do is just feel the diaphragm widen, enlarge as we breathe. That's how we know we're activating our primary breathing muscles, the diaphragm. So if you'll join me, we'll do a couple of breaths together. So sitting up nice and straight, and we'll breathe in for 3 seconds. 3, and out for 5. And repeat. And exhale. It helps to breathe through the nose if you can. It slows down the passage of air and humidifies the air. You may like to focus on something really positive. It could be the face of your child, unless your child is what's actually triggered the need for this practice. It could be a sunset or something else. And then returning to whatever the drama is at hand. It's a great practice that can be used throughout the day in lots of different ways, and it just brings us to that baseline of calm. If you have been hooked up to the heart rate monitor in one of our workshops, you will see how effective this technique is in bringing people to a state of coherence. So relaxing into sleep, calm the biology, tell the biology, hey, you're actually really safe. Now's not a time for all of these thoughts drifting into the past or the future. Now's a time for sleeping. So we breathe our way into sleep. First thing in the morning, start from a baseline of calm. During breaks, smart switching between work and, well, home and work are the same thing right now. Refreshing intense meetings, unless you're in essential services, of course. You might need this more than ever. Refreshing during tense meetings, bringing calm presence, just being effective in resolving conflict. Powerful technique that, and there are lots of other breathing techniques. So in the military, they use box breathing, 4 seconds in, 4 seconds pause, 4 seconds out. Experiment with these. Look on YouTube, you'll find lots of different breathing techniques. But from a resilience perspective, we find the long exhalation really effective, because every time you breathe in, your heart rate increases. And every time you breathe out, the heart slows. So if we're constantly breathing out for longer than breathing in, the net result is that your heart will slow down. Sleep. How's everyone's sleep going? Feel free to type into the chat box. I'm interested. Is everyone sleeping better or worse than usual? I think it's on and off, right? Yeah. I think we do have the opportunity to get more sleep. I'm seeing lots of responses here. Let's take a look. Sleeping okay, worse for sure, good. So it's different for all of us. Better, not as busy. Yeah. I think some people are having the 2 a.m. wake up and actually finding that the hamster wheels start spinning in the mind, whereas some of us are actually just enjoying the extra space and time. Good. People getting more exercise than usual. Excellent. Sleeping a bit better. Great. Okay. So as I mentioned, this is the time, if ever there has been one, to try and build some habits that will support us beyond this particular phase of our shared experience of our lives. So in terms of sleep, and you've probably heard this before, 7.5 hours is great. That's going to set you up for success. Between 7 and 9 works for most people. More than 10, not so good. Actually, the science shows that that's worse for us than less than 6. So trying to find whatever your sweet spot is and stick to it. Most of the sleep researchers agree on one principle, and that is regularity really supports your resilience. It takes the strain off our biology of constantly adjusting our circadian rhythm. Now, every morning for the past 3.8 billion years, there's been this great big alarm clock in the sky. It wakes us up. In fact, we've actually changed. Our biology has adapted to be incredibly aligned with that. Our circadian clock is set by the rising of the sun. This is great. During the day, we have peak alertness around 10 a.m. And that's a great time to create the conditions for flow. In Silicon Valley, some organizations even have a phenomenon called monk mode, where for the first part of the day, you just go into total lockdown. You don't focus on anything else but your most important tasks. I like the idea of a 1 hour monk mode where I can give my child something to do. Everyone's in their own space. We create our little work bubble and we try and get into flow, because when we're in flow state, we are up to 500% more productive. So that's a real win. So if you can cultivate the conditions for 2 really deep, focused flow states during your day, well, arguably many of us can get as much done as we would in a busy open plan office. Just something to consider. As we progress through the day, good time to go exercising, maybe doing some body weight exercises just to stay fit, taking a break. Around about 9 p.m., the body releases melatonin, which makes us start to feel sleepy. However, in our modern world, we often have lots of devices around us at that time of night. Maybe a laptop, an iPhone, Netflix over there, a tablet on the sofa. As a result, all of this blue light stimulation from the screens triggers the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is highly sensitive to blue light. And our body says, oh, hold on, it's morning. Get rid of all of that melatonin. And that can make it difficult for us to fall asleep. So cultivating your light environment to be more conducive to sleep, really effective. Maybe it's just a case of turning off a few bright lights in the evening, in that 90 minutes before bed, starting to put away the phones. Don't stop watching Netflix. There's lots of interesting things on there at the moment, but just a few less lights around can really improve the quality of our sleep. If you want to track your quality, this is a great time to do it. So if you're managing to secure 3 deep sleep cycles, we get the full benefits of sleep. You can track this with another app. I mentioned Welltori for your coherence. There is an app that uses your phone. Most advice would say don't put your phone in your room if you can avoid it. If you're not going to be checking news feeds at night, you could try this little app out and see if you can secure 3 deep sleep cycles. I've been using this app for about 3 years now, and it really helped me to both gamify sleep and build up self-awareness around some factors that will support me getting my 3 deep sleep cycles. I discovered that if I wake up at dawn, my sleep improves. Exercise, it improves. Yoga, my sleep improves. Red wine, bonus. Fasting and being productive. So there's some factors that can help. It's called sleep cycle. It also only wakes you up when you're in a REM sleep cycle, when you're in light sleep. So you never wake up with that alarm. What a name for the thing that we encounter first in the morning. Okay, so let's keep going. As I am speaking quite fast, I hope you don't mind, but I just always try to add as much value as I can in short amounts of time. We're going to move up the spiral to the realms of emotion, and we will have some time for questions at the end. Now, how many of you have been feeling like this over the past, I usually say 72 hours. Let's just go 4 hours. I dare say a few of us have, right? There's a part of the brain that's responsible for those strong emotions. It's called the amygdala, 2 almond-shaped nodes. They're the watchdog of the brain. They become very sensitive in the face of challenge, threat, and they fire up, and they can result in some potentially destructive emotional outbursts that don't necessarily support our resilience. This could be anger, sadness, fear, craving, emotions like that. So just in terms of an architecture of what happens when the amygdala, those 2 almond-shaped nodes, hijack the human part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for logic and conversation and rational discussions and our ability to think using symbolism and a sense of time and all of those things. Our higher human functions can be hijacked by this little almond-shaped node, which gets a first look at all data that's entering via our senses. So the architecture for an amygdala hijack is often a trigger. The child throws a plate of food on the floor, or I get that email when that I wasn't expecting. We have an instant reaction. We tense up, often coupled with a strong emotion: anger, sadness, fear, craving, disgust. And if we do respond strongly, there might be a subsequent feeling of regret. Now, we can mitigate the risk of an amygdala hijack, because if it causes us distress, that's that's a risk to our resilience, right? If it uplifts us, upgrades our experience of life, that's an asset to our resilience. So what we're trying to do is just notice things that might compromise our resilience, and certainly a feeling of regret can do that. So what is the competence that we can build in response to an amygdala hijack? The first thing is to do nothing. Just zip it. Breathe out. We practiced that already. Calm the biology. Everything's going to be okay. And then we make the decision about how we're going to react using the prefrontal cortex, the modern human part of the brain. It's only been around for about 250,000 years, and it takes a little longer to activate. But once it's active, it can overpower the strong amygdala response. And with more and more practice, we get better at this. I sometimes describe, you look at our rugby players, the All Blacks, or martial arts experts. They have, while they're in physically dangerous activities, they've mastered this impulse control. They're able to stay really calm. Someone could stamp on their head, and instead of blowing up and having a fight or an argument on the field, they calm themselves down and they return to their position and get ready for flow state. So the more we can learn this, the more effective we can be. These little guys, meerkats, are often called the amygdalas of the animal kingdom. They are on such high alert for potential predators that they basically are always in that fight, flight, freeze state. They're constantly on guard for predators coming from the sky or coming from the land. They even appoint a meerkat sentinel. He watches out for predators and barks really loudly to let the others know what danger is in the vicinity. Something I was contemplating this morning was, imagine if you gave that little guy or girl internet access, gave them a mobile phone. They probably would never come out. And I suppose that's kind of what's happened to us in some ways. But the amygdala is very strong. It's a part of our biology. It's deeply embedded. And with us being connected to all of the world's information in our pockets, it is on high alert right now. So just noticing that, accepting it, and limiting our connection to potential threats and challenge can be good for our biology. So we all experience a lot of emotions. Emojis are probably being used more than ever before in the history of humankind. And they do reflect the different states that we're in at any point in time. Remember, facial expressions are a way of us presenting emotion to each other. Emotions have been around a lot longer than language. Language is relatively new. So there are universal emotions. Disgust shows everyone that, this is potentially bad food, a strong signal. However, with our emotional toolkit as humans, what we find is that if you look at the little yellow quadrant, that's our positive emotions, we do have a tendency to experience a lot more negative emotions. It's called our negativity bias. Many say it's part of our success, why we survived. Those of our ancestors that were risk averse, that were potentially more negative, survived. Those who jumped out of the trees and went and patted the tiger, they didn't reproduce. Their ancestors, they're not around anymore. So being aware of our negativity bias, especially in the midst of challenge, can help us to take action and offset that. Optimism is not about happy, clappy, Pollyanna syndrome, anything like that. Optimism is about being a realist. It's about seeing things as they are, but not worse than what they are. In the midst of adversity, there is usually some opportunity. And I think we're all trying to understand what that might be right now. And it is going to be challenging for all organizations, mine included. And we're just trying to understand what that might be. But if we can be optimistic and calm and present and focused and connected, I think we give ourselves the best opportunity to detect different patterns in the environment, to notice things that are going on, to make better decisions in the midst of adversity. So we can build this up as a competence. If you are experiencing a lot of anger, well, we can actually be proactive about developing the opposite emotion or nudging towards it. And in this case, it's compassion. I'll show you what the opposites are. So fatigue, I'm feeling really tired. Can I find one thing that I can be passionate about in this situation I'm in? Anger, can I find something or some kindness that I can extend towards someone? Fear, can I stay calm? Calm the biology. Craving, I'm going to be grateful. Often when things are not available, we start to crave them more than usual. And sadness, can I find one thing to rejoice? And it's often those simple things like just breathing, going outside, watching a sunset, going for a walk with a loved one, whatever it might be, just finding some way to nudge from the negative and counter that with the positive. If all else fails, you've probably seen Dr. Sven and Declan and everyone else with their chopsticks. Well, even just a couple of minutes with a chopstick in your mouth can trigger the zygomatic nerve. You can use a pen, your own pen, certainly at this point in time. And what it does is it triggers the zygomatic nerve. I can see Liz is onto this. I'll join you. And what it does is it actually, I won't subject you to that. What it does is it actually tells the brain, hey, Brad's smiling. The cheek muscles have been contracted. And as a result, the brain will give you a little boost of dopamine. So you can stack some habits, right? Here's my suggestion for today. Power pose, long exhalation, pen in the mouth, as a family. And that is real-time resilience. That's a hack that we can all use at any point in time. And I encourage you, try those three together and you will guaranteed feel better. So moving up the spiral, we've just got a few minutes left. Focus, staying focused, really important. If we can be focused, we can find the gateway into our flow state. It also just helps us to stay connected with people. You know, Dan Goleman, who wrote the book on emotional intelligence, subsequently wrote a book called Focus, because he said if we can't focus on another person, there's no point having emotional intelligence. So focus is vital. In Resilience Institute research, we found that that was the #1 factor supporting high resilience, was the ability to focus. And we can all develop this. We have around 70,000 thoughts per day. That's a lot buzzing around in our brains. If we can bring ourselves back to the present moment, we allow ourselves the opportunity to focus on whatever's important to us right now. So to do that, I suggest coming back to your body, which is always in the present moment. And if you're seeking a rhythm to focus on, the breathing is a great rhythm. So if you'll join me for 1 minute, let's just try and notice where our thoughts drift and bring them back in real time. So feel free to close your eyes, or you can look at me if you wish. I would rather you didn't. And we will just exhale, nice long exhalation. And now just allow your breathing to return to its normal rhythm. And try and focus on that sensation of breathing. You might even like to shine that beam of attention on the space between your nostrils. Relax your forehead, relax your jaw muscles. Just for a few breaths, keep refocusing. As you notice thoughts luring you away, just acknowledge them and just bring attention straight back to the sensation of breathing. All right. And when you're ready, wiggling your fingers and shoulders, rolling your shoulders, and slowly open your eyes. We're back in the room. Now, you're not supposed to allow dead air time during a webinar, but I thought we live in such a busy world that finding those little gaps for a little bit of attention control, a little bit of mindfulness can be really useful. It's very beneficial to body, emotion, and mind. In fact, just as little as 5 minutes a day can lead us to a less reactive amygdala, can improve exam performance, improve our attention control, reduce inflammation, biological benefits of meditation. And if you have access to the Resilience app, you'll see that there is a whole series inside of there presented by Dr. Sven. If you don't, you could download something like Headspace or Calm, or get in touch and we can organize the Resilience app for you. Some very practical tips to finish off with. Sleep, really important. It strengthens the immune system and improves focus. I'll send this to you in infographic form. Stretching can prevent injury. It's also a great way to start the day. We've got a whole stretch guide available for you, setting one clear goal and trying to get ourselves into that flow state and take a break afterwards. We can't sustain flow for more than 90 minutes in most cases. Make sure you look after your well-being. Take a walk, a jog, try some body weight exercises if you can. Rest, relax. We've already started today. We had that little breathing session together. And gratitude, positivity. Identify 3 things that are going well. That's real-time resilience, because we do get dragged into that negativity bias. Eating healthy foods whenever possible, connecting with loved ones and giving full attention, shining that beam of spotlight strongly on whatever it is or whoever it is that we're engaging with. Trying to stick to a schedule, waking up at the same time, exercising, create some rhythm in the day, and limiting our news and social media exposure. Remember our meerkat friends. That's it for this session. I'm looking forward to answering some questions. We've got loads of resources on the Resilience Institute website. We've got a lockdown special on our app, and I will send a copy of my new book, Resilience Mastery, to everyone who attended today. So I hope you enjoy that, a PDF copy, not a print copy. And thanks so much. I hope this has added a little bit of value in a short amount of time.